Okay, there they are.
Good morning.
Hello,
Hello.
welcome. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces too. Welcome everybody. Thumbs up if you can hear me okay. All right, good there. So we've got the Zoom sign language is in effect and well rehearsed. Okay, there's Judy. Good. Hi, Judy and Kim and Deb. And is that Jeffrey Dow? Oh my goodness. In Lebanon. Okay. Judy in Turkey, Deb in Toronto. How many of you guys are in Europe? Thumbs up if you're in Europe. Okay, welcome. Welcome. And so a few of my friends are here, a few new friends. Welcome everybody. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes here as I let people file in. And if you would be kind enough to not black out your face, it would be great to see your face. Oh, Mary, it's early for you, Mary, in Alaska. And let's see. Oh, there's Samantha and Victoria. Welcome, Victoria. In Miami. Okay. Kim Andrews, Sabina. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I've met you before. Welcome. And am I related to Sharon Wolf? I am related to Sharon Wolf. That's my mom-in-law. Okay, so. Okay, let's get going because it's too exciting, and I want to take advantage of every moment possible. Okay, so just you're familiar with trying to just keep your mic off so that we can not pick up all the background noises. So welcome everybody to the first event post contemplative studies. This is the first time my friends and I are coming together after a 2-year journey. And welcome each and every one of you who are joining us, whether you're familiar with our crew, our motley crew or not, you're most welcome. And today we have the pleasure to host Julian Bound, who's a UK-based travel photographer, author, and photojournalist. And he's been kind enough to do an impromptu experiment with me today, which is, I'll tell you a little bit about the backstory. And, all of us most likely are feeling somewhat similar in the sense that lockdown and COVID has put us all on a hiatus and restricted our movement. And if you're anything like me, that has stirred up quite a bit of angst and a little bit of longing for travel. And since my friends and I just finished 2 years journey online through a very intensive course in Tibetan Buddhism, and that came to an end, I was sort of circling in my imagination as to what might be next. And at the end of this year, hopefully I have a pilgrimage planned. And in doing some of the research on the pilgrimage that we're heading to in Nepal and India at the end of the year, I was doing a little background work, thinking maybe on publishing some kind of photo book or photo series of essays about the pilgrimage. And in doing my research, I came across the work of a Mr. Julian Bound. So it's out of sussing out the competition that I came by way of his unbelievably prolific amount of photo books available on Amazon. I was actually, it's the kind of thing where you start scrolling and you see one book by Julian, 2 books by Julian, and they just kept going. Just kept going one after another. And I was just, and then not only were they photo books of some of the most inspiring places that I've ever visited in my life, and such stunning photographs. I think we all can all appreciate the expression that photos capture 1,000 words. It's so true when they're done well by someone who has that kind of talent. But I also noticed that Julian also did some novels. And so, and he also just released a book by way of the sea, which is about a journey of a Tibetan monk from I believe it's Tibet to India, and his sort of existential predicament, which I think in a way coming out of COVID, most of us can relate to. In a sense, we've been disoriented as to who we are and where we're going. And that's what a great pandemic can really do. And so I was very much inspired and intrigued by Julian's body of work and where he's been. And then it occurred to me that even if we might be stagnant and locked down and restricted in our ability to travel, we could travel using our imagination. And so I wondered if it would be possible to meet with Julian and to showcase some of his photographs and engage in a conversation that would help reactivate and reinvigorate our sense of imagination, and to use technology in a way so that we could all go on a pilgrimage, even if we never left our own homes. So that's really the spirit of the way I came to Julian, and then we exchanged emails, and then instantly got on WhatsApp to discuss how we could possibly do it. And I found him to be so charming and humble. It was really, really wonderful, Julian. A really sincere gentleman, and very kind and very thoughtful, but very humble, very nice, warm energy. And so we decided that we would do a little bit of an experiment, which was we'd formulate today's discussion around a series of photographs, but we wanted to be a little more impromptu. So he sent me a very vast collection, and I was to select from his collection of photographs 10 or 12, and I wouldn't tell him which ones. And then I would post them, and he would reflect on, reflect on the backstory, basically, essentially, of the photographs. And then, of course, since I've in my lifetime taken 9 pilgrimages to these various areas, I would just piggyback on some of his comments, and we would maybe engage in a dialogue. And whether we got through the 10 or not, in a way, we would hopefully go through stories and a journey together, all of us. And I found it very difficult to choose 15 or 12. So
Good.
So I think I have some 20 photographs or something like that, because when you have a body of work like that, it's very hard to pick and choose. It's a little bit like choosing between your own kids, I imagine. So that already, we already have probably more than enough. And in a way, it doesn't really matter if we get to them all. It's just really a touchstone. And then what I thought we might do is, since we have 50 people, welcome those people that have just snuck in. Welcome to the Contemplative Studies program. My name is Miles. I'm co-hosting with my colleague, Allison Graham, and we have Julian Bound with us today for a little psychic or virtual journey, a virtual pilgrimage to Asia. So I wanted to, before we get into Julian's actual photographs, just ask 2 things. I'm gonna invite Julian to just give us a little backstory on who he is and how he came to be a photographer, and a little bit on how he came to his first journey, just so we can get a visual cue on him and get a sense of his energy, and get a little running start before we hit the photographs. But I'm just also going to ask you, if there's any of you that along the way have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and Allison will reply to them, and I'll try to keep a note of them. And then we'll save a little portion of the event today, just so to have a little interaction. Maybe we can ask Julian some questions, or you can ask me some questions, and that way a little bit more interactive. Okay, so Julian, please take it away. Just let us know in a nutshell, sort of a little bit where you come from and how you first became a photographer, and why Asia, and what got you to Asia for the first time.
Hi, everyone. Well, I was born in England, and at the age of 31, I sold everything: the house, the car, just everything. All my possessions fit into a backpack. And I ended up in Bangkok, and I was going to stay there for 10 days, but I ended up living there for 3 years. And from there, I lived in China for a year, and then ended up in India and in Dharamsala. And that's where I suppose my journey of Buddhism truly started. Although it was starting in Thailand as well. So it's been quite the trip. So it's 11 years altogether that I've lived in Asia. And I ended up living in Nepal for 4 years, where I got work as a documentary photographer, documenting the earthquakes of 2015, working for various embassies and in conjunction with the United Nations. But it seems that my photography is focused on Buddhism throughout Asia. And I took a pilgrimage myself where I visited 7 Buddhist countries in 7 months and documented each country.
Yeah, that book is especially intriguing to me. I believe that's the one that's called The Middle Way, Julian.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Seven Buddhist countries in 7 months. That is, I mean, we could probably just spend the hour just talking about what that was like, but I want to probe you a little bit. Just the therapist in me wants to know a little bit more about the giving up of all your possessions. Now, something like that doesn't just come out of nowhere. So I'm sure some of us would like to hear a little bit about what led to that decision. I'm sure some of us would very much like to unburden of ourselves of just about everything. But I think maybe you're in the fortunate or unfortunate position not to have any kids. But in following true to the Buddha's life story, it sounds like you abandoned a little bit the worldly life and just head off. I know in our conversation before today, you were saying that you have like 2 forks, 2 knives, 2 cups, probably 2 pairs of knickers, and at the drop of the hat that you know if you get a call for to be called to photograph something, you can be on a plane within a half an hour.
Yeah.
So what's the backstory about your personality? How deeply have you been traumatized, Julian?
Oh, the issues. No, I was the owner of a busy hairdressing saloon with 10 girls working for me, and it got to the point where I didn't have to work, and I've always had wanderlust in me, and I just had enough one day. And I decided on the Sunday that was it. And on the Monday, I put the house on the market. And it sold within 3 months, sold the business, sold the girlfriend, sold the car, no, just got rid of everything. And off I went. And I've actually done it 3 times. I ended up, I think 6 years later, I had another business, another hairdressers, and I sold that as well and got everything down to a backpack and went again. And I did it a couple of years later as well. And it's just, now I have very few possessions. I like clothes, but that's kind of all I have really. My place I rent is furnished. And I think it comes from 2 things. The one thing comes from, you've got to carry a backpack. So everything in that backpack has to have a reason. Otherwise you're carrying kind of dead weight. But also, as I got more into the Buddhism, I developed kind of non-attachment and the impermanence of things as well. And the need for, I just have all I need really. Yeah. As long as I got a nice pair of jeans and trainers, I'm fine. But otherwise, possessions, they're of little value to me.
You know, in hearing this, I don't know if people that are listening had the same experience, but it strikes me that during COVID, our priorities about how much stuff we've accumulated really had a very powerful effect. That, I mean, I remember sometime in the summer, I was basically wearing 2 shirts and 2 pairs of shorts. And I mean, my life constituted a little square. My working life constituted a little square. In the summer, that's all I needed. And, you know, somehow the pandemic created a radical shift of priorities. So somehow there's a sense of relief about not carting around so much stuff. And also, I wonder a little bit about, I mean, before we get to your photographs, the wanderlust that you talked about, because you know it's not everybody who wants to venture to some of the areas that you went to. I mean, to be frank, I'm sure we'll get into it. they can be dangerous. They can be very challenging. The infrastructure is not all that good. Um, and so, what is it about the spirit of adventure where did that come from? Do you think, and how how has that been for you?
Well, I've always travelled. I've always been away, and I've always travelled with my parents. So from the age at 6 months old, I was in Ibiza. So they're only 2-week holidays, but I'm used to being away. But I've don't know. I've always been fascinated in other countries and just being in other places, really, and just I don't know. Maybe I'm quite a free spirit, really. I think that's kind of what it is. But, yeah, and I don't think the wanderlust ever leaves you. I think it's just in you, just to do it, and it's not for everybody, but for me it is.
Yeah, it's something I really relate to. I was raised in Hong Kong. My parents my dad was from the UK, and my mom grew up in Turkey. So I had a lot of early exposure, as my kids do right now, about travel. Seems to be one of the main things. Looking back, the ability to travel and all those trips to Thailand I was taking when I was a kid, because from Hong Kong it was just a few short flights. They really made a huge impression. I mean, the biggest teaching I think I had growing up wasn't necessarily in school. It was the ability to interact with different cultures and to try different foods and to see different terrains and to be immersed in different cultures and contexts. I think that for me made such a very, very strong imprint. And just since we're on we're on the powers of photographs. I remember when I was in school in Hong Kong, I must have been 16 or 17, and there was a photographic exhibit in my high school, and they were black and white photographs of sadhus in Varanasi. And they were so compelling. I didn't quite know what it was about those sadhus, but I mean, I had never really seen anything like that. And it just was like very magnetic. And I'm sure for other kids, it wasn't compelling at all. But for me, those sadhus on the banks of the Ganges, I didn't know what they were doing or what they were about, or even where that place was. And eventually I remember pulling aside the art teacher at the high school to ask her about where the photographs came from. And she gave me the backstory about her travels to India. And then she turned me on to a photographer named Steve Rainier. Have you heard of Steve Rainier? Well, we should Google him, because he's one of the world's most fantastic travel photographers. His main subject has been the indigenous cultures. So he's embedded himself in in tribes in different areas from the Amazon and his photographs of Varanasi are just they're mesmerizing. But I guess I just wanted to say that I think we both share that early experience in common, and it's one that I wanted to share with my kids. I mean, by the time Bodhi was 3, he was already in India, and now the kids have been to Sri Lanka and Nepal and India. And as a father, it's one of the main things that I really want to impress on my kids is just the expanded vision of possibility when kids leave their own cultures and have to, in a way, experience the challenges of travel, of flights, of buses and trains, of language, of trying new foods. Although all that my kids end up eating right now is bloody peanut butter, but nevertheless, you have to try anyway.
I live off biscuits when I'm away.
So, all right, well, let's get into some photographs, because we can just jump off each photograph and give each its due. So bear with me as I launch this and share the screen. So I just wanted, all of these obviously are all Julian's photographs, but this is one that he had at the end. And I just wanted to give him a chance to help orient us in time and space. I imagine this one is your middle way. I mean,
Yeah.
is this the route of your middle way journey?
It actually starts in Delhi, but I took it from Bodh Gaya. So that was the first place, and then up to Dharamsala to MacLeod Ganj, and then to Lumbini, Pokhara, Kathmandu, and then from Kathmandu I took a 4-day trip to Bhutan, which was just out of this world, because it's I think there's only 100,000 tourists allowed a year, and it was like going to a different planet. An expensive planet, because it was $250 a day visa, but it was worth it. And you saw a different side of Buddhism, because it hasn't been that well documented. And there was a different, even though the robes were the same color, there was a different feel about the place as well, with all the monastery fortresses. And and then from there, I took my second visit to Tibet, which was a bus ride from Kathmandu to Lhasa, which took 7 days to get to Lhasa. And
did you say it's a 7-day bus ride, Julian?
Well, it was yeah. It was hard work. It was great, but it was hard work, and we had some Chinese policemen escorting us on the bus as well, keeping an eye on us all. And for example, the one day at 6 a.m, when we all got up, they said, "Okay, we're going to Everest Base Camp," and we hadn't been told we were going to that. So there I was in a denim jacket and jeans and trainers, and we ended up at base camp. Mine was it 4,000 meters and minus 26 degrees. It's great. And then and then to Shigatse, to Tashilangpo Monastery, which was superb, and to Gyantse, and then finally to Lhasa, where we had 3 days, Patala Palace, Sera Monastery and Dripung Monastery. But the interesting thing is that was in 2014, and I first visited Tibet in 2004. And of course, in 2004, I would say there were 5 Westerners, and Lhasa was almost like a large village. Whereas within 10 years, it was just a sprawling metropolis from the Chinese influence, because the Chinese government said if you move to Lhasa, you don't have to pay any tax. And so that was, hence, it was a very different place. Yeah. Still good, but yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll get it. I think I've selected at least one from each of the destinations. So I imagine then you went from Tibet down into Southeast Asia through Burma?
Yeah, I went to, sorry, I forgot we did that. We went back to Kathmandu, and then I flew to Bangkok, and I went up to Sukhothai, because I used to live in Chiang Mai, which is much further north. I was there for 3 years. I'd never been to Sukhothai, so I went there, and then into Myanmar, to Yangon and Bago, and then trying to remember now, and then back to Bangkok and into Cambodia.
It's reminding me of a trip that I did when my second pilgrimage. I must have been 20. I went to India for the first time when I was 20, and that was part of a college abroad program. I spent 6 months in India, mostly in Bodh Gaya. And then as soon as I finished my degree, we went right back. I mean, as soon as I possibly could, I went right back. And then we did an excursion that included India, Kathmandu, Thailand, and Sri Lanka. So it's a very similar type of, and that was 4 months. And of course, these things are absolutely exhausting, but it's only in retrospect when you have a cache of images and memories that it seems to take on a different kind of glow. Anyway, we'll talk about both the challenges and the treasures of travel as we go through, but maybe we can start with this image here.
Yeah, this is Tashi Lumpo, the main courtyard in Shigatse. Just one figure is that there used to be, I think there were 1,400 monks living within the grounds, and now since 1950, there's probably 40. Although there's a lot more monks coming in as novices, but yeah, this was the huge courtyard in the middle of the in the middle of the monastery. So there weren't an awful lot of monks around, because you'd expect to see it swimming with burgundy, but there weren't many. But they kept all the structures, and there was no photography allowed within the temples. But I got a few, but they're a bit blurred. But yeah.
And what's around Shigatse? Like what's the feel if we were to have a 360 panoramic? What was your experience or sense of the monastery and its vicinity?
It was rife with security guards and police, and you weren't allowed to have any contact with the monks, to talk to them. And secrecy. It was quite a barren place, actually. Yeah, very beautiful, but very barren place. Mm-hmm. But it was, and I'm right. I think I'm right in saying that it's the seat of the Panchen Lamas, the Tashi Lumpo.
I'm not so aware of the history, and I'm wondering if Shigatse was one of the first monasteries in Tibet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that and Gyuto Monastery, which was in Lhasa, but they escaped with His Holiness to India, and just outside Dharamsala they founded the Gyuto Monastery there.
I mean, one thing that I can say when I see a picture like this, of course, this is a place of religious practice, but on the other hand, I mean, especially those of us that have just been through a long course like the 2-year contemplative studies program, this is also a university. I mean, this is like Oxford. This is where the canon of practices, theories for awakening, for enlightenment were maintained, and this is the sort of a time capsule in Tibet of it's called the 3 yanas. The 3 yanas are the 3 types of learning that one based curriculum based on renunciation, one based on non-duality, and one based on the tantras or secret practices. And I look at a photograph like this, and I think this is such a rare thing on this planet, that you would have a space for learning, for the human being to flourish. I mean, a curriculum preserved for a human being to become awakened or enlightened. That's what I'm looking at, is not just a place to sit down and meditate, or whatever kind of fantasies we have about the religious aspect, a few monks in their robes with some mala beads. But basically, this is the Oxford of enlightenment. You could put it that way. And then fortunately, I mean, when you're talking about guards, I have never really had the inclination until recently to go to Tibet, because some of my colleagues have reported exactly what you've reported, which is the sense of heightened security and the kind of, in a way, it's kind of put on show. The Chinese only allow you to see what they want you to see.
Yeah.
and you're kind of being watched. And I don't know if you'd agree with this. I don't know if your experience of it was a little bit fabricated, a little bit like orchestrated, what you get to see, not get to see, what's allowed, what's not allowed.
Well, it's interesting because in my first trip to Lhasa, I went to Potala Palace, and you could just wander and go in every room and just wander around, kind of basically do what you want. But now it's set up like a museum, and you're guided to whatever rooms you're allowed to see, and a rooftop. But in 2004, it was just like a big playground. You could just wander.
And we'll move on, but did you get to pull aside a few people to talk to, or was even that sort of prohibited or prevented?
Well, when I was in Dharamsala, I met some Tibetan families who knew I was going to Tibet, and they had families in Lhasa that they haven't been able to be in contact with. So they gave me a big stack of letters to deliver to families in Lhasa. So I smuggled those into the country and got my contact and handed the letters over, relieved that they were no longer in my bag, only to be given another stack of letters to return back to return back to India with, which was smuggled across Tibetan customs.
So Julian, what was that like for you?
Oh, it was horrific. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was quite scary actually, because I also took some covert photos of the security in Barkor Square for the Tibetan government, and I had them on a memory stick, and I stitched them into my backpack. Yeah, but it was worth it, because people have to see really, what's going on.
But to deliver letters from loved ones whom may have not had a chance to communicate, weren't it not for your, courage or offer to transport them? That's quite a story. Those are the kind of stories that I don't think, if any of us are paging through your book, we get a chance to really appreciate.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing, it wasn't just letters. It was it was a scarf and a lipstick, because they couldn't get that certain shade in Lhasa. So that was, and I think, yeah. No, it was just a fascinating time. But it was the sense of adventure of it, that you were, and also that you were, you were helping people who, they can't talk on the phone. I don't know if they email or WhatsApp, but I doubt it. So, yeah.
So we're obviously looking here at the Potala.
Yeah.
I think every picture is just the immensity of the Potala. But what's it actually like to be there?
Oh, it's the interesting thing is where you can see the people walking now and again, you'll see very bedraggled people prostrating. So in the prostration, stand up and they move a couple of steps and then go down again. And the special thing is that this is their destination. And so you happen upon these people who are arriving at Potala, but of course they've probably traveled for 2 years through the wilderness, prostrating all the way. So I always feel very, very fortunate to see their end of their journey.
Yeah, to me, that is that's a very emblematic thing to say about the Tibetan culture. I don't quite know if we have anything equivalent like that in a modern secular society, the kind of devotion that it would require to move a human being in that way. Yeah. I know that they do the same around Mount Kailash. I'm not sure if you ever visited Mount Kailash.
No, I haven't. But if you look at the top of Potala there, I don't usually use Photoshop, but I have on this photo, because there's a huge Chinese flag flying at the top of the palace. But I've for the powers of Photoshop, I photoshopped it out because it shouldn't be there.
I'm so glad that you did. I've never been so glad that something has been photoshopped has been used. But you're quite right. But just to return to the idea of, because the theme of today is the journey of awakening. Okay? And I think, in one way or another, you're on a journey, I'm on a journey. If you're listening, you're on your own journey. You're captivated by photographs. Maybe they represent a physical journey, but certainly we're all on a psychic one or a spiritual one. But the one of pilgrimage, of the prostration, the prostrating pilgrim, for example, in Bob Thurman's circling the sacred mountain, which is his account of his journey to Kailash, that actually human beings would go a year or two in complete prostration towards a destination, and then you think to yourself, what's going on there? They must be in quite, like what would it take in the imagination of a human being to prostrate themselves every 3 paces? This is what's called a purification practice, and the idea is that there's so many afflictions that imprints that laying on the mind that obscurate the natural clarity of the mind. So in the mythology or the cosmology of Buddhism, the idea is that there is our basic goodness. Each and every one of us has basic goodness, a primordial mind that's unstained. It's quite the inverse of original sin. It's more like original clarity. They call it natural clarity. But since beginningless time, the natural clarity of the mind has been obscured by imprints, negative imprints from hurtful actions or selfish actions. And so the idea is, how do you return to the natural clarity of mind? Well, you take a virtuous motivation and a series of virtuous actions. And what those virtuous actions do is they kind of clean the mind, just as if you wanted to clean a river or a stream or a glass of water. And so it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy to even do 10 prostrations, never mind 2 years of prostrations, never mind 2 years of prostrations on barren ground, stones, and etc. But in this way, I guess the point I wanted to make is not necessarily the thing that strikes me is that it's not the arriving at the destination that's the victory. It's the process of going. It's what's happening on the journey. It's the every step, the action or the activity of every step. And I think some of us who have traveled, and certainly I'm guilty of this too. You start out wherever you are at the airport, and you have in mind a place that you're going to get. You're going to arrive there, and then something's going to happen when you get there. Only when you get there. We're going to arrive at enlightenment, in other words. And part of the thesis of my book, Gradual Awakening, was really to say that the process is what awakens us, not the destination. The process, the slow, incremental process of unwinding the knots at the heart and of revealing the natural clarity of the mind that's always been there since beginningless time. And so when I hear stories of people that have done that for 2 years, and then you and I arrive at Lhasa, like having gotten there by taxi and
the bus
and the plane in 2 days, and yet someone left, they departed 2 years ago, and their vehicle is the prostration and our vehicle is the bus ticket. It just really, it just really shows what's so central to their worldview. What's so central, their spiritual practice is everything. It really is everything. It's remarkable.
This is in Barcourt Square, in front of the Johang temple, where you've got this lady's in the middle of people who were prostrating all around her, and it was just just capturing that intense look of devotion within her. Actually, that's just one shot. I just saw it, took the one shot, and I just captured it. Yeah.
So what do you see, Julian? What do you see? When you're looking through the lens, what are you seeing and what are you feeling?
I don't know. It's the strangest thing when I'm with the camera, and when I'm taking photos and there's friends around, they don't recognize, because you just become a different animal altogether. It's almost like hunting, and you're aware, and you're seeing, you're in the present moment, and you're aware of everything around you. It's almost like everything stops, and you look around and you focus on that one thing. And this lady was standing there, and I just got it. But it was just the intense devotion in these people.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it. Look, I mean, I've met people like this in Bodh Gaya. I haven't been to Tibet, but some of the more mature, senior people who have definitely seen
Yeah.
what they've seen and what they've lived through under the occupation and the genocide, and yet there's something quite remarkable of how the unshakable nature of their devotion and commitment to compassion. Uh, it is remarkable, right? Because if we put any of ourselves in a situation like that, um, I guess the question we could ask ourselves is how easy would it become to become resentful and bitter and angry and victimized,
Mm-hmm.
and to lose faith or confidence in humanity, and to become hardened or cold. And yet, time and time again, I meet people like this in Bodh Gaya who are doing their practice, and they're filled with light. Their eyes, they may be weathered, and it's certainly weathered in the sense that they've experienced hardship, but their eyes have a kind of light about them. And when you engage them, you feel this buoyancy, even if it's not as someone as matured as the Dalai Lama, for example, just common everyday people like you and I that still have a tremendous amount of humanity and generosity of spirit. And that's what I see in this photograph.
Mm. Ah. This is Drepung monastic university, just on the outskirts of Lhasa, and it's such a different world compared to Tashilhunpo, where there's only a handful of monks, whereas they were everywhere. Well, they should be, really, but if you can see the long sheets, that's they're all studying, and there was just a murmur of studying going on, really. And I just wandered around taking photos, and they just kind of, no one looked at the camera, and they just, as if I wasn't there. Mm.
Yeah, that's anybody that's been on the contemplative studies course knows about the lists, the irritating lists of philosophical. It's an insider's joke, I guess, but whenever you enter into Indian philosophy or Buddhist philosophy, you inevitably encounter the arrangement of the curriculum is done in such a way that it's created succinctly in lists, or generated succinctly in a number of lists. And of course, the reason for that is because it becomes much easier to memorize. But in a way, our cultures have just gone away from memorization. We can hardly memorize anything, and we've become so reliant on technology to do just about everything for us. But the old world cultures set about to put every single thing into memory. And I think that is quite a remarkable thing. And in a way, our notions about meditation, for example, where we sit down and breathe quietly for 15 or 20 minutes, what they're doing right here is another kind of meditation. I mean, as Julian describes, moving around this setting with his camera, their minds are undeterred. They're crystal clear, focused on the script. These are philosophical texts that they're going through, prayers, for example. and they're razor-like focused, and they're going through it. They probably go through it maybe twice or three times a day. They probably do the same text over and over and over again for years. For example, the Prajnaparamita, the text on transcendent wisdom, they may do that for 10 years in a Geshe curriculum of 20 years. Maybe half the time they're studying one text and memorizing it. The idea is that they're bringing it into their mind, and then they're bringing it down into their intuition. So they're bringing it from a conceptual level, then not relying on the external, but internalizing it, and then bringing it almost like wiring it into their intuition. And of course, that happens. There are usually three activities that comprise the daily routine of the monks. The first one is the prayers or the recitation, and then I'm sure I think you caught some images of the debates in the courtyard. And then there are the meditation sessions. So these three elements of internalizing the wisdom and then debating it and actually having to like defend it in a way. It's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to know it so well that you can defend it. And then to meditate on it. And this is what's called the three ways of wisdom. The wisdom born of learning, the wisdom born of contemplation or debate, and the wisdom born of meditative intuition or internalization. So I only bring it up because of all of our resistances to learning these days, where it's so hard to memorize and so hard to go through the lists. And even like I'm doing a little challenge on Instagram with 30 steps. And, after you get to the fifth one, people give up. I just can't do it. Anyway, fascinating. This picture is really remarkable for me. It's just so beautifully captured, Julian. The colors and just the composition. It's just amazing. It really is amazing.
Yeah. This is Bhutan. This is Panoka Fortress Monastery, and along that, where they're stepping into, that's a wooden bridge that they go across there. It's actually the wooden bridge that was featured in the movie Little Buddha, Bertolucci's film. But this is just a ride. I think this is my. I flew into Bhutan at, I think I got there at 7 a.m. and the trip starts there. And you jump in the car, and this is probably 10 a.m. and this is before I'd even been in there, and I just saw these two monks walking towards the door, and of course I knew they were going to go in, so I ran behind them and just got the shot. But the temples and the monasteries there are so different to what I'd seen in Tibet or Nepal. They're just huge. I mean, I don't know how many stories, but they're very, very tall.
Joan, let me ask you, when you arrive in Bhutan, did you have a quote unquote assignment, or how do you work? Do you just let the day take you intuitively? How does the actual flow when you hit a country, when you did on the middle way with 7 countries in 7 months? Like, do you have it storyboarded out? Do you have like destinations that you must hit? Do you have particular images you have to capture that you pre-assign or pre-see in your mind's eye? When I had a conversation with you, I felt you to be really a kind of spontaneous guy. And so I'm just wondering, for example, in Bhutan, what the daily, sort of schedule looks like and how you move from place to place.
Well, in Bhutan, because it's a 4-day trip, like I said before, it's $250 a day, but that includes your own driver, your own vehicle, and a guide, and a hotel for the night. So you're just driven around all day. It's fantastic, but it's pretty full on for these 4 days. But it was just magical. There was countryside I'd never seen before, not even in books. And there weren't many Westerners. and a Westerner isn't allowed, or a visitor is not allowed to walk on the streets alone. They have to have somebody, their guide, accompanying them everywhere you go. It ended with the Tiger's Nest monastery, which is the famous one on the mountainside, and that was. It took about 2 or 3 hours to walk up there, and I think I'm right in saying that you walk through 10,000 feet of altitude all the way up. It was hard work, but I got the photos in the end. So that was the main focus. But for having an itinerary myself, it's just I just seem to happen upon these things. Mm. I just turn up and I kind of and it's there. I learned not to. I always think if men make plans, the gods laugh. Mm. So I kind of wing it. That's the adventure. But I have been on paid gigs where I've got 2 days work, and the first day you haven't got anything, and so the next day you really have to turn it on. But you get there in the end. Yeah. But also a strange thing is when I'm. Especially this photo here, I pictured it in my mind a couple of days before I took it. For some reason, it happens not all the time, but now and again with my photography, that I actually see the photo that I'm going to be taking. Yeah, it's.
I mean, you have captured them in lockstep there with one foot crossing the threshold. It's just that's a magic.
Yeah.
That's a magical moment of mythology right there. The doorway, of course, symbols. I mean, the symbology of the doorway and the threshold. I mean, those of us that did the Return with the Elixir course, that very much speaks to the unconscious of going deeper into something, the unknown. And of course, the unknown is the only place where something creative can potentially emerge. So there's. There are many dimensions to looking at a photograph. Of course, on the 3-dimensional plane or real-time plane, there's you in Bhutan on a 4-day excursion, and you're capturing this. But then on the other level, I mean, this picture may just be speaking to another kind of mythological dimension of the human odyssey, in which, unless you depart and cross a threshold and enter into some state of liminal or some perhaps darkness or unknown, nothing new can be discovered. So that's also at play here. Maybe I'm doing a projective test on myself here. This is a little bit of a Rorschach using your photographs.
I don't delve too deep, but yeah, it's. Yeah, they almost look like, I know they're monks, but they almost look like they're the same person as well. I always think on that. This is in the capital of. This is on my first day, and it's just to show the enormity of these monasteries, which is it was just stunning to see. And like I say, it was almost like Tashiumpo because it was quite barren there as well of people.
I did want to introduce you to Tashi Monox, who is a friend of mine. He lives near you in the UK. He's one of the world's foremost calligraphers of the Tibetan tradition. He makes actually quite a number of journeys to Bhutan. In fact, he's been commissioned by the king. Get this is a very fascinating story. It really, it inspires a lot of my praise for Tashi and my admiration for him. As a Westerner, he was a young monk you're near Wales, are you, Julian?
Yeah, on the border, just about 40 minutes south of Liverpool.
So there is a Tibetan monastery in that area. I'm not sure what it's called or how far away it is, but he was a young monk there. He very early on started, had a predilection for calligraphy and spent his life really refining the art and craft of Tibetan calligraphy. And I'm only doing that now because I'm noticing in this picture that the banisters have it looks like a form of Tibetan calligraphy there, and it reminded me of Tashi. And after he disrobed, he maintained his calligraphy practice, and over the years has, in a way, preserved the tradition, so much so that Bhutan invited him
Oh,
as a keeper of the tradition of calligraphy to teach the next generation of Bhutanese so that their tradition would not be lost. And I thought, oh my God, I mean, what an honor, what an unbelievable honor for Tashi Monarchs to be part of a cycle of preserving a tradition so that it's not lost to humanity, and to make sure that a culture can sustain itself. And that is, to me, just like mind blowing. So I just wanted to just say that.
this is the capital of Bhutan, which I can't remember what it is. I think it's Thimphu, and this is the memorial stupa. So they're all facing a memorial stupa, and there's devotees walking around it. And then these people are doing their prostrations on their wooden boards. But one memory is that I asked, it was full. It was full of people. I think it was like a Thursday, and it was full of people. And I said to my guide, "Is this a special event?" And he said, "No, every day, every day." Oh, okay. I thought it was a celebration or a party, but he said, "No, every day. It's normal."
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. And this is this is the Rinpung monastery in Paro, and my guide was busy WhatsApping with his girlfriend, and so I snuck away, and there was a sign saying no entry, and I went into it, and there was this school for little novice monks, and it was as if I was invisible. I just kind of, you keep your respect and your distance, but I just got this shot of these little monks asking their teacher. Yeah, it was a real.
The light is incredible in this one, eh?
Yeah, well, I bought a new portrait lens, and it's the first time I used a portrait lens, and it just gave this effect of. There's a series of these photos, but it just gave the effect that I wanted. But I always find this is such a special photo, because it, like I say, it's almost, like you're invisible and they're just getting on with life. And the interesting thing is they're not interested that they're having their photo took. They're not interested in anything else, social media or such, or I'm going to be on TV. They're just totally besotted with life, of what they're doing, which was quite refreshing, thinking back. Mm. And this is Bodhanath, Nepal, Kathmandu. I would visit. I was based in Kathmandu for 4 years, and I would go here like kind of twice a week, and probably once in the evening. There's a really good pizza restaurant, and there's usually no tourists, and you have Bodhanath to yourself. But I'd visit here often, and I would. I've got quite an extensive collection of photographs of Tibetan people, of portraits, and of roughly of this age, because I'm wondering that in years to come, as the world becomes more westernized, we may not be seeing the traditional dress that's worn now. I know the aprons that the ladies wear, the stripes signify if they're single, married, or widowed. I don't know much else beyond that, but I like this photo, and I can remember taking it, and it was just one shot. I just saw her look up, and I got it. Yeah, but this is a very special place for me.
Well, yeah, Bodhnath is,
Yeah.
I think Shitenzen Zopo, one of our teachers, when we were there in 2018, called it a wish fulfilling gem. In other words, be careful for what you pray for and wish for there, because it might happen.
Yeah. I also, it was the top of the stupa was damaged in the earthquake in 2015. So I spent the next 18 months documenting the mending it and fixing it.
Yeah.
And I think that was featured in the New York Tricycle magazine. But that was, and then I went to the inauguration of when it was finally fixed and the celebrations there. And it was quite interesting to do that for 18 months, because I've got a vast array of photos of it in different stages, covered in scaffolding and boards, and then the final, and then actually seeing the guy throw the saffron water around the white stupa as well. Yeah, it's good. Makes me homesick.
Well, I'm feeling the same way, and also just the reverence they have for these places that they're living. They're not just brick and mortar and stone. They're like living, entities in a way. The Bodhnath Stupa is like a living. There's a vibrancy, a living connection that you make with a place like this. This is part of the cosmology.
Yeah.
So what happens there? There's like a living connection. So there's something very, very subtle, but very powerful.
Yeah. And this is opposite the stupa, and this is the temple, and I can't remember its name, but this was the day of the unveiling of the repaired stupa, if I remember rightly. But this temple's always been special to me, because I think it was 2003 I arrived in 2003 I arrived in Nepal, and I'd seen the stupa, but I didn't know it was in Kathmandu, so I happened upon it, and yeah, it's been a big part of my life, really. Yeah. But I think you're going to show I know what photo you're going to show next.
Do you?
Which is, yeah, there she is. Yeah, which is when you go up the temple steps, on your left is this huge prayer wheel. And this photo is special because there were so many people, and they were just, they were like ants everywhere. And I remember just jumping in front of some people and taking one shot. And then I got back to my hotel room and opened the laptop, and then there she was. I don't know. It was just, but I think this is my favorite. I mean, I've got lots of favorites, but I think this is one of my favorites.
Now, when you say that, what goes into being it a favorite? Is it the aesthetics of it, the composition and light? And is there something about your actual energetic experience at the moment? What else goes into it being one of your top?
I don't know. It's just because it's such a special place to me, and just to get that shot, and just, I mean, the way I did it, I didn't stand there and take, like I say, I jumped and just click, and off I went again, because there were people in the way. But I've just captured her. I don't know what she's thinking there, but it's just the light, and yeah, I just like it, I It almost looks like a kind of Vermeer style with the windows and the darkness and the golden everywhere. And the nice thing about using my friend's laptop is his screen is much better than mine. So I'm seeing my photos afresh. And I'm like, wow, yeah, I got that sharp. I did. But I do love this photo. Yeah. And this is from the rooftop of the temple we've just been in. And that's one of the sacred deer from Sarnath. And yeah, just climbing those 3 sets of stairs to get to this. And of course, friends would come visit in Kathmandu, and they'd want to see, so I would take them here. But I never grew tired of going here. Yeah, not many people there today, but yeah.
Yeah, it's bringing back a lot of memories, I think.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, no, maybe 1998 was my first trip to Nepal. I took a picture of my teacher, Chokinima Rinpoche, right here, with this as the background. So it's just bringing back memories like that. I guess that's the power of photographs.
You've got all those candles behind you. They're constantly being fed, tray upon tray of wax candles. And you're standing there and you can feel the heat on your back from all these candles. And yeah, special. This is Lumbini, the Mayadevi temple, where Buddha's footprint is in there, isn't it? Into the stone. It wasn't the brightest of days, as you can see. So it's not the best photo, but I wanted to put this photo in just to show Buddha's birthplace.
And this is actually one of the places I've never been that we will actually go.
Yeah.
This October. So what's it like there, Julian?
Lumbini. Oh, it's lovely. Lovely gardens, and you go through this door here, and inside it's just an ancient bricks everywhere. So it's like a modern day walls around an old fortress. And in the middle is there's a piece of granite with an imprint of a foot, which is said to be Buddha's footprint. And no photographs allowed inside. But I did get a couple, which I've kind of sent to you. I know. Have you got that one?
I don't have that one. I'm
with
sorry.
all bricks. There's all brickwork on there.
I don't think I included it, but I did notice how naughty you are. You don't regularly follow the rules, do you, Julian? You bad.
No, I kind of take photos until I get told to stop. But this is Mahabodhi Temple, Bodh Gaya, and there was a 3-day puja on when I arrived there, and I think I've been fascinated by the idea of the Bodhi tree since about 14 years old, and always wanted to see it. And I got to see it. It's actually behind this behind the temple there. But an interesting thing I always find is like you can see the influence of the spread of Buddhism, because not only have the Indians took it under their wing, but they've shown it in their own Buddhism, in their own style of architecture.
Well, that's the wonderful thing about Bodh Gaya. It is truly the epicenter of enlightenment. It's ground zero of the Buddha's awakening. This temple is situated right atop what's called the diamond throne, where the Buddha sat down. And then, of course, this is the Eastern perspective. And so behind this would be the tree. So if you imagine that the Buddha was facing us, then he'd be flanked by the tree, which is actually in the West. And the wonderful thing about Bodh Gaya, and this is where I spent the first 5 months of my first time in India, this village here, is that all the major cultures, Buddhist cultures around the world, have a their own version of their own temple in their own style or architecture located there. So it is like the Mecca of Buddhism, and yet it is also a kind of melting pot of all the various strains or strands or presentations of Buddhism. So around the diamond throne, around the Mahabodhi stupa, are dotted the uh, the temples in the architectural style of each of the cultures. So you can go to a Zen temple, you can go to a Tibetan temple of each of the four Tibetan traditions. You can find your way across the street to a Sri Lankan temple and several Thai temples there. And it's just, I remember when I was 20, I mean, it was like the greatest anthropological opportunity a student could have, because you could make a journey to all these cultures without leaving the block, in other words. And then at the end of the day, you could just sit under the tree where the Buddha gained enlightenment. I mean, if that's not going to make an imprint on you when you're 20 years old, I don't know what is. So I share your fascination with the Mahabodhi. I never get tired or old of it. It looks like an alien spaceship, first of all. But I've asked several people about the Mahabodhi proper. And of course, when I went there when I was 20, you could actually go up into the Mahabodhi and up, and there's a series of balconies that are up there that they don't let people go up anymore. But I used to go up there, and you'll see across or down the back of the temple here, there are different little circles, and these, it is emblematic of the chakra system. So there's like embedded in the temple itself is a whole world of the internal body of the internal map. So it's very much as above, so below. The temple complex itself is a mandala, which is considered a celestial abode. It has a cosmology, but then the temple itself, from the ground up, is also a chakra system of a human being, ascension of the Kundalini until it reaches enlightenment. So it's a fascinating study, the Mahabodhi temple complex.
And that's the Bodhi tree itself, which is a fig tree. And yeah, they were just people just meditating, just sitting there everywhere. I know what photo's coming up.
Well, I do want to just preface this that some of you guys went to Sri Lanka with me, what seems like a lifetime ago, but the wonderful connection between Sri Lanka and Bodh Gaya is that, and it's a wonderful metaphor, it is that the invasions, the Muslim invasions in northern India destroyed Buddhism, and they snuck out a sapling of the Bodhi tree, the original Bodhi tree under which the Bodhi gained enlightenment. And of course, the pious, at the time, the pious Sri Lankans and the Theravada, the way of elder, preserved and replanted that original Bodhi tree in Anuradhapura. And then as we learned on pilgrimage there, they were saying that little saplings were taken all around the island, and over the centuries, the Bodhi tree multiplied and became little sacred abodes around the island of Sri Lanka, like little sacred refuges. And then it came a time where the original Bodhi tree was either poisoned or destroyed, and certainly Buddhism, came under the sword of the invasions of the Muslim invasions of northern India. And eventually there came a time where they brought the sapling back to Bodh Gaya. And so it was like, there's a wonderful metaphor in there of like the power of preservation. Of course, there's a metaphor of impermanence in there, but then the sapling was brought back. And so what we're looking at now is the sapling that originally went to Sri Lanka and then was brought back and reinstated. And now it's come full circle. So it's an amazing story, amazing story.
Yeah, there she is. This is one of my favorites as well. This is on the west wall of the Mahabodhi temple, and she was just sitting there or kneeling there like that, and I wanted to see her eyes, and so I walked round, and she was still sitting there, and then I walked round again, she was still there. I went for lunch. I came back, she was still there. For 2 hours, she didn't move. And in the end, I just left. So I never got to see her eyes. But that was, yeah, she didn't move from that position for 2 hours.
So you played chicken and she won. She didn't flip.
Yeah. I didn't want to disturb her or anything, really. Did you
make this one into an album cover? Because it is album cover worthy, isn't it?
It's
just got that look.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, there's just something about it. And she literally didn't move. I think I've got a photo that I took. I think this is after 2 hours. And I've got another photo somewhere that I took 2 hours before, and it just didn't move. But there's something about it. But it also shows, the devotion again. And once you know the story behind it, that she didn't move from that position for 2 hours, it epitomizes the devotion within people.
I'm just, in the interest of time, because I want to just check in with people, I'm going to just flash through a couple of these here. This is Sarnath.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've had Lumbini, where the Buddha was born, and then we had Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha gained enlightenment. This is Sarnath, where he gained and gave his first teaching. I just want to move forward. This is Varanasi. Of course, this is on the main holy city on the banks of the Ganges. This is quite a colorful picture, Julian.
Yeah, it's so hard to capture Varanasi.
But it is so. It is an incredibly mystical place, isn't it?
Yeah. And of course, there's His Holiness.
So I did want to make sure that we get to this picture, and then I want to at least give a couple minutes to people who might want to ask some questions of you. So this is, I think, this and the cover of your book, what I have last here.
Yeah. This is His Holiness' 80th birthday in Delhi, and I managed to get into the party. I got through. I was telling Miles that I got through 2 lots of security, and the third one I didn't get in. And then I sat in the lobby of this lovely hotel and said Tashi Delek to the Tibetan guy next to me, and we were talking, and he was head of the Dalai Lama's security, so he got me in. And this is my personal blessing off His Holiness. And I stood there and took the photo.
Yeah, I was trying to convey to you, Julian, that's such a privilege and such a rare, not by coincidence. There's something about you that you managed. There's something about you that you've managed to be attracted to these holy sites, and then had the great privilege of meeting great beings like the Dalai Lama. And I never got to really ask you, when you do make your rounds on these journeys, do you ever do your own practices there, or do you have a personal practice, or are you heading in that direction in your life now? Have you been? What about your own personal practice? And then maybe you can end on this, and if there are any of you, and you can end on your new book. And if any of you have any questions now, we're going to transition a little bit here towards the end of the presentation.
I say it.
Go ahead.
I say I've got a meditation room, and I will meditate kind of. I try every night, but it doesn't usually work that way. But I can tell when I need to do it. I met I presented His Holiness with my book, The Middle Way, in 2019 in MacLeod, which he liked. That was good. It kind of made it all worthwhile to take all these photos of Buddhism. But yeah, it's interesting. It's not until coming back to England that I've really had to work hard at the Buddhism of with life in general, really.
I ask because when we go in October, November, we'll be going with Geshe Tenzin's Open. The pilgrimage is not just the powerful places, it's also the master to be with, and it's also the practices that we do together. Some of the people online right now have been with me either to India or to Sri Lanka, and moving together as a group with a common purpose, and then finding ourselves located at these sites that have their own incredible power, and then doing a text reading or a recitation or a meditation together, or prostrations, the whole package. Really, it's really the whole package. And so I just want to just invite you to come with us, Julian. Come with us in October.
If I'm allowed, if we have a vaccine passports, yeah, that would be. I mean, I haven't been. Yeah, it was. I haven't been there last year, so it's about time. Yeah.
Do you want to bring us up to date with a little, you want to leave us with a little teaser of your new book, By Way of the Sea?
Yeah. So this is, I have it here. I'll read you the back, which is, struggling with his beliefs, a Tibetan Buddhist monk begins a journey to see the sea he was always dreamt of. Traveling on foot through Tibet, Nepal and India to reach his goal, those he encounters along the way start to restore a faith lost to him. So basically, it's his travels. He's always wanted to see the sea. So I have my map that helped me write the book. And he starts in Tibet and then through to Nepal and then into India, visiting Lumbini, Bodh Gaya, Varanasi, Sarnath. And I suppose it identifies with my spiritual journey, because at the start of his trip, he doesn't really believe at all, but in different encounters he makes, brings about the lessons of compassion, kindness, attachment, impermanence, reincarnation. And I think you'll read his gradual process of becoming aware, which was my trip through Asia over a decade. Just that gradual awareness and the understanding. Yeah. An unlifting of the veil. And I'll just throw in the other book, which was The Little Monk Who Loved His Noodles, which is a book that my friend illustrated it, and I wrote it, and it's just about a little monk who also doesn't really believe in Buddhism, but gradually becomes to understand and becomes aware. His noodles. Yeah, and that's a special one as well. So it seems that the Buddhism kind of drags me into everything until I accept it, which I have. But it's been a long process.
It's a great journey. It's slow. The book Gradual Awakening was exactly this, the slow, incremental, almost that you don't really recognize it until you're way down the line and you look back and see how much ground you've covered and where you've come from. Well, just let me thank you, Julian. It was so such a pleasure to meet fortuitously like this, and then to make the acquaintance, and then hopefully we can develop some more kind of events or planning or programming, or hopefully I plant a seed with you that hopefully we'll all be able
Yeah,
to travel at the end of this year, and actually go to these places, and that you'll come with us.
it'll be a pleasure. Yeah.
So let me just open it. Oh, by the way, Allison, our program director, started what's called the CSP Courtyard, which is basically a community meetup, and she's had to come up with the idea of doing a book club to just keep people together, and reading some things, and then having a little time to discuss. And since this is our first event post the contemplative studies program, she actually nominated your book as the first book.
Oh,
People are going to do a book club around. So anybody that's listening that wants to participate in that, you can just click the links and find some more information on the Courtyard. Allison will send you a follow-up email with a little bit of information about that. But anyway, on behalf of all of us, I just want to thank you, Julian, for all your tremendous work. We didn't get into some of the nitty-gritty. I had some stories up my sleeve of when pilgrimage doesn't go so well, and how hard it is to be on the road, and the most challenging stories, which are also, they're also very interesting ones. If you survive, then they make great conversational pieces. But we'll save them for another time, unless nobody has any questions of Julian. Is there anybody there that wants to ask him something or anything of the event? You can unmute now if there's one brave person with a good question. Otherwise, I'll just ask him. What was one of the more challenging experiences, and how did you grow from it?
Well, yeah. I got bitten by something and fell, and I broke 2 ribs, and then that was 3 days before my Tibetan trip. And of course, it was a 7-hour bus ride, a 7-day bus ride with broken ribs. But it was still, yeah, I lived. It just added to the adventure of it, really. And I think it kind of, I don't know. Yeah, there was lots of things. There's too many to mention, really. But the trek up to the tiger's nest in Bhutan was a real tough one. It was so hot as well, and of course, I got to the monastery at the top, and there's no cameras allowed, and you had to leave it outside. So I never went in. Because I wouldn't be able to take any photos. So. But the photo I took got into National Geographic, so that was worth it. But yeah, it's. But I find as well, you know yourself after living in India, that there's a certain way to be with people, and to be a lot gentler with people, and that's something I've tried to carry on doing here when I'm back to where I come from now, which at times can be quite difficult, because if you're immersed into Indian or Nepali culture, you're just taking for granted that people are a lot gentler, and so that's something I to lead, not to judge and not to preach, but to show by example. And that's my test at the moment. Yeah, that I'm winning. I must add. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. But I'd like to thank everybody for listening and for hopefully enjoying my photographs. And it's been a pleasure to be able to talk about them, really, and to show them off.
What a sweetheart, right, guys? Thank you so much. What a sweet energy. So humble, nice. Very nice to meet you, Julian. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very much.
And all the best. I know your wanderlust will get the better of you, and you'll be on the path, fully vaccinated with your passport sooner or later. And I will too, for Christ's sake, because I can't spend another day with my kids in my house. Anyway, I'm going to just say hi to a few friends and look at some of these nice faces here of everybody. Thank you. If you're near and dear to me, I love you. And if you're new, welcome. Thank you for participating today. Nice to see all your faces and for enjoying and joining me to enjoy Julian's photographs and stories. I hope you enjoyed our little experiment. We don't know what will happen next, but it's always nice to go off the beaten path and try new things. So thank you so much for making that happen with us. Okay, and now it is the beginning of spring. So go away, enjoy the day wherever you are, and we'll see you very, very soon. Thank you again, Julian. Thank you to everyone again. And thank you, Allison, for helping to put this on. And we'll see you all very soon. Jeff, nice to see your face. Take care, all of you guys.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Take care.
Blessings to all.
Thank you.
Thank you.